In 1954, Ernest Hemingway won the Nobel Prize for Literature. But he didn't keep his medal. Instead, he gave it to a small shrine in Cuba to honor a 400-year-old wooden statue. This is the story of why. Cuba is an island nation of around 11 million people. For centuries, the country has endured colonization, slavery, and brutal wars. It also faced a Marxist revolution. But through all this turmoil, one symbol has survived to unite the Cuban people. They call her Our Lady of Charity, or Cachita for short. The incredible story begins in 1612. Two indigenous brothers and a young Cachita, African slave remembered as the Three Juans, were in a small canoe looking for salt. Suddenly, a violent storm overtook them. As they prayed for their lives, the skies miraculously cleared. They spotted something floating on the waves. It was a small wooden statue of the Virgin Mary holding the baby Jesus. Despite the raging storm, the statue was completely dry. Fastened to the wood was a simple inscription: "I am the Virgin of Charity." The boys brought her back to land, and eventually a shrine was built for her in the nearby copper mining town of El Cobre. This isn't just a religious legend. This statue is the ultimate symbol of Cubania, the very essence of Cuban identity. Because she was discovered by indigenous and African boys and embraced by Spanish colonists, she mirrors the three ethnic groups. She quickly became a fierce symbol of freedom. In 1801, a royal decree freeing the local mining slaves was read at her shrine. Decades later, soldiers fighting for Cuban independence carried her image into battle, earning her the nickname the Mambisa Virgin. In 1916, the Pope officially declared her the patroness of Cuba. But her real test came after the 1959 revolution. Cuba became a secular state under a communist regime. In 1961, the government banned her traditional public procession. This sparked riots and forced the expulsion of over 100 priests. For decades, the system tried to wipe out the church's influence, yet the devotion to Our Lady of Charity proved completely unshakable. She survived it all, eventually drawing historic visits from Pope John Paul II and Pope Francis. Today, she represents absolute hope and reconciliation. Whether a Cuban lives on the island or in exile, and whether they are a devout Catholic or simply a proud citizen, Our Lady of Charity brings the entire country together. Governments change and systems fall, but the soul of Cuba remains completely untouched. Hit subscribe for more histories of our Blessed Mother.
Stay here for a deeper look into this story of Cuba's Our Lady of Charity.
This is the story of Cuba itself, its people, its struggles, and really, its soul.
All right, let's just jump right in with something that might blow your mind. You know Ernest Hemingway, right? Well, in 1954, he wins the Nobel Prize for Literature, a huge deal. And what does he do with the actual medal? He gives it away to a small statue in a tiny church in Cuba. Why? Because even he knew she wasn't just some icon. She was the very symbol of what it means to be Cuban.
So that Cubanness we're talking about, there's a word for it, Cubiana. And you've got to get this concept to really get the story. Think of it as the very soul of Cuba, this incredible mix of indigenous, African, and Spanish roots all woven together. It's complicated, it's beautiful, and Our Lady of Charity, well, she's right there, smack in the middle of it all.
Okay, so where does a symbol this powerful even come from? Well, our story kicks off with what sounds like a legend, a miracle, really. We have to go way back to the early 1600s, out on the choppy seas off Cuba's coast.
So try to picture this. It's around 1612. We're in the Bay of Nipe. A massive storm just tore through, and now there's that weird, heavy calm that comes right after. You know, the sea's still churning, the air just feels thick.
And out into this scene, in a tiny little canoe, go three people. Two indigenous brothers and a 10-year-old boy, an African slave. History calls them Los Tres Juanes, the Three Juans. And here's what's so incredible about this origin story. These three people, they are the three roots of Cubania we were just talking about. It's like poetry.
So they're out there just trying to find some salt when they see something floating on the waves. From a distance, they probably thought, oh, it's a bird. But as they got closer, nope, it was something else, something totally unexpected.
It was a statue, a small statue of the Virgin Mary holding baby Jesus, just resting on a piece of wood. And this is the part of the story that everyone remembers, the detail that makes it a legend. Remember that violent storm? Well, despite being tossed around on the waves, her clothes, they were completely, totally dry. How is that even possible?
And that wasn't all. Carved right into the board was a message, a simple, powerful sentence that would echo through Cuban history forever. It said, "I am the Virgin of Charity."
So, you have this incredible discovery. But the story doesn't stop there. This statue, found in the middle of the sea, starts to become something else, a symbol for revolution. She wasn't just some local relic. She became a real force for freedom.
Eventually, this statue ends up in a village called El Cobre. Now, El Cobre was known for one thing: its brutal copper mines. And for the enslaved miners there, the most oppressed people you can imagine, she became their secret. She was their beacon of hope, a protector for people who had nothing. And then, get this, in 1801, something truly amazing happens. The King of Spain himself issues an order freeing the slaves of the El Cobre mines. For those miners, there was absolutely no doubt who made this happen. It was a miracle. It was their virgin. And right then and there, her reputation as a liberator was sealed.
So fast forward a bit. When Cuba starts its huge, long fight for independence from Spain, she's already this powerful symbol of freedom. The revolutionary soldiers, the Mambises, they prayed to her for protection. They even gave her a nickname, the Virgen Mambisa. Think about that. She's not just a saint anymore. In their eyes, she's one of them, a freedom fighter. So her place as the symbol of Cuban identity is pretty much set in stone. But then comes the 20th century, and everything gets turned upside down. Her role and that entire identity would be challenged in ways no one could have predicted, especially after the revolution in 1959.
Just look at this timeline, it's a total roller coaster. In 1916, she's officially declared the patroness of Cuba. Great. Then, 1959, you have over 1 million people celebrating her in Havana, and who's there? Fidel Castro. But then, boom, just 2 years later, that same government bans her public procession. Public faith gets pushed into the shadows for decades. And then, in this unbelievable twist, Pope John Paul II shows up in 1998 and crowns her Queen and Mother of Cuba, right there for everyone to see.
So this all begs a huge question, right? After decades of the government officially being atheist, trying to stamp out religion, how did the people's devotion to her not only survive, but actually seem to get stronger?
Well, the answer is pretty simple and pretty powerful. The faith went home. It went underground. It became this deeply private, personal thing, passed down quietly from parents to their kids. If you can't worship in public, you make it a family tradition. And that kind of devotion, turns out, it's pretty much unshakable.
And you can literally see the proof of this today if you go to her shrine. People leave these things called ex votos. They're basically little offerings to say thank you. But we're not talking about just little trinkets. We're talking military medals, university diplomas, and yeah, remember that Nobel Prize from Hemingway? It's there too. Every single one of those objects is a whole story, a thank you for a prayer that was answered.
Okay, so what about today? What does she mean now? In a country that's been so divided, by politics, by geography, you name it, she's become one of the very few things that can actually bring people together.
People often don't talk about her as a queen or even a saint. They talk about her as a mother. And what does a mother do? She doesn't care about politics or if her kids live here or there. She just wants all her children to come together.
And her reach is just amazing. For Cubans still on the island, she is the motherland. For all the Cubans who left in exile, she's that connection back home. It doesn't matter what your politics are, whether you're in Miami or Havana, she is still a sacred piece of who you are. So when you look at her today, she's all of these things at once. For the diaspora, she's that lifeline to the homeland. She's this incredibly rare bridge between people who disagree on almost everything else. And maybe most importantly, she's a symbol of hope, that maybe one day there can be peace and reconciliation. She really is the soul of Cubania, all the different, complex pieces that make up the Cuban people. Which brings us to one last thought. This whole story started with 3 very different people, an indigenous, an African, and a Spanish presence, all united by finding this one thing. So as Cuba faces whatever its future holds, you have to wonder, can this 400-year-old mother figure be the key